Welcome to another episode of Mission Compliance, Unleashing Growth Potential for Defense Contractors. In today's episode, we continue down the road of understanding CMMC, its regulations, and controls. Up next is AC L2-3.1.17. Protect wireless access using authentication and encryption. And don't worry, we're getting close to the end of the first control family. That's right, the first control family. We'll break down what this control means, why it matters, and how it impacts your organization's cybersecurity posture. We'll also provide practical insights and strategies for achieving compliance and securing your systems effectively. So whether you're a defense contractor aiming to win more contracts or simply someone interested in bolstering your cybersecurity knowledge, you're in the right place. There's a snake in my boot. We're joined once again by Mike Frieder, president of On-Call Compliance Solutions and a CMMC professional assessor. We're getting it started with a little bit of Toy Story. How you doing, Mike?
That's right. That's right. Well, I'll always happy to be the Woody of the story.
So, Mike, this week we're talking about encryption. This control states that the wireless connection in use must be password protected or some other method of authentication, such as a PIN or a token of some kind, as well as it needs to be encrypted. So this is very similar to the last control where we talked about the need to allow access to a wireless network. Why is it important for it to be password protected and or encrypted?
Yeah, so great question. Very similar controls, and but they're different in what they require. So 3.1.16 is basically a control that says you can't have an open wireless network. 3.1.17 says it's not good enough to have just a password to get access. You've got to have it encrypted as well. And what's interesting is you kind of have to really look a little bit deeper into this control, because when you look a little bit deeper, there are two ways that you can secure CUI. One of them is physical security. And believe it or not, that's the preferred one, is to physically protect CUI within a secured facility or area. The second way is with encryption. And generally speaking, there are two primary times when you're going to use encryption as the primary method for protecting CUI. One of them is going to be wireless, because you cannot physically protect a wireless signal. It's just impossible. Unless you're like Batman or something like that. So, or maybe Professor Xavier, who knows? So the point is that you can't protect it physically, therefore you must encrypt it, which also means that when you're protecting your wireless signal, you actually have to go a step farther, and you have to use a FIPS 140-2 validated encryption method on wireless networks. Again, there's a control that's way down deep. I think it's control family, maybe 13, that mandates that if you're using encryption, that encryption is using FIPS 140-2 validated encryption. So think AES style encryption. Now, the good news is even home routers have this kind of encryption, all right? So any kind of WPA encryption is going to be AES encryption. Virtually all routers have this, wireless routers, wireless access points, etc. So it's not going to be an issue of you having the equipment able to do it, but there are other encryption types. So like WEP is a great example, and everybody knows that WEP is very, very, very easy to hack. Gosh, you can go get a copy of the Linux distribution Backburner, and you can very easily spin up a wireless hacking utility that will cut through WEP in minutes. Again, you can YouTube a video on exactly how to do that. So ultimately, you definitely want to use a WPA or better style of encryption. I think they even have WPA 3 out now. And that's really a critical piece to understand, is it's not good enough to just password protect your wireless network. You certainly can't have it open. That's Control 16. But you also need to use, you also are going to need to use encryption with it. Now, the control states authentication and encryption. Okay, so it's kind of interesting they put authentication in there, because if you look at Control 3.1.16, authorize wireless, and then they're saying, in 3.1.17, protect wireless access using authentication and encryption. To me, this is redundant. I think it's really kind of poorly written in this regard. I think there's no reason to have the word authentication in Control 3.1.17. Frankly, I think you could combine 3.1.16 and 3.1.17 Again, I don't have NIST SP 800-171 revision 3's sort of draft because it's not finalized, but I don't happen to have that draft in front of me, but I would be willing to bet that's one of the consolidated controls. Again, in revision 3, they're allegedly going from 110 controls to 95, but none of that is actually finalized yet. Ultimately, what this is about is it's about making sure that you have to actually have a password to get into the network, and then that network and the communication between your computer and the wireless access point is encrypted. So that's what this is really all about, Roman. And again, to me, this is nothing short of common sense and just taking a logical approach to how this is all taken care of.
Right. So you said this is common sense and that kind of thing. So what are the key assessment points that an assessor should be looking for?
Yeah, great question. So on this one, there's only two assessment points. So the assessment is pretty straightforward and easy. The first one is determine if wireless access to the system is protected using authentication. Super, super easy. Again, sample answer might be authentication is required before wireless connection access is granted, just indicating you've got to put in some sort of password, token, etc. Second assessment point is determine if wireless access to system is protected using encryption. Now we've got to make sure that there is some kind of encryption involved. And again, every wireless access point, every wireless router, they all have, controls for that, even wireless controllers. So wireless access utilizes, in this case, I think we wrote WPA2 encryption. That would be a valid answer for that. So, this is kind of a little bit of a different control because it's actually really straightforward and easy to understand, unlike most of the other 110 controls, which probably take a little bit of interpretation for. This
Yeah.
one is probably pretty clear, but a pretty easy one to comply with.
This is also one of the shorter control videos on our YouTube channel. I said that last week, and I think this one might have been shorter.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, look, our goal is to simplify compliance. So if it's not a complicated control, I think there's probably no reason to really drone on and on about something that is actually really not that complicated. Now, I'll tell you this: I've seen articles online about these controls, and there are definitely some people out there who can make this thing sound pretty complicated. But hopefully, we're making it actually sound much simpler and easier to comply with. I think it is one of the easier ones.
Right. So you said this is easy. Are there any potential difficulties here, or have you run into anything that you're like that made you scratch your head about people with this one, or is it just too straightforward to mess up?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I will tell you that probably 90% of the companies that I walk into actually don't know what kind of encryption they have on their wireless network. I find that kind of interesting. I have some limited resistance that I'll run into about having an open wireless network for people to be able to access in conference rooms and things like that. And sometimes we have situations where there is no guest wireless network and they're just letting visitors right onto their main network, which is obviously a big no-no from a compliance perspective, because you're introducing sort of alien computers into a secured environment with NIST. So that's, I think those are the common ones that I run into. I'll tell you what we tell our clients to do is if you don't know exactly what kind of encryption you're utilizing, a couple things you can do. One is you can just look at in most devices, if you look at the wireless configuration, it'll tell you what kind you have. Another one is, you can also just sort of sit back and look at it and say, okay, well, this is the kind of encryption that I have. And, if it's not telling me on my device what it is, then go check your router. And, generally speaking, it's pretty straightforward. So on this one, I think the biggest thing is resistance to open networks and conference rooms. And if you have an open guest network, that's fine, as long as it is segmented from the other network where your CUI exists. So just to be clear, we just don't want any CUI to coexist on an open network. So not a whole lot of challenges with this one. I don't really find that we have to switch out a lot of equipment on this one. But again, I do find that a lot of people just simply don't know what their own security settings are. And obviously that should be documented somewhere in maybe your IT operations policy. So maybe another angle of this is making sure that you actually have what your configurations are documented in a policy that proves to an assessor that you actually know what's going on and that there's a setting or a document to check against, all of which I think is very important.
All right, absolutely. And that's three, which means number four is our favorite part of it. The silly question where we try to round out this topic that maybe help it not seem a little bit quite as dry. We try to have a little bit of fun here. We talk about wireless connections and needing to be encrypted and password protected, whether it be an actual password or a PIN, which is what I sometimes prefer, or any other kind of token. But would it be possible for my authentication token to be a personalized tic-tac-toe pattern or even a series of 8-bit cartoon characters?
The answer is absolutely right. So I think with the right locking system, you can have a visual key, you can have a thumbprint, you can have all kinds of interesting things. As a matter of fact, actually, speaking of tic-tac-toe, I don't know if you remember this, but on Android devices, it was really, really popular for a while, where you could, make a little tic-tac-toe pattern with your finger across the nine,
Yeah,
the nine digits.
yeah.
So, there's always room for one more tic-tac-toe game in whatever you're doing.
My sister used that. I've always been a pin guy. I've always been like the 4 number or 6 number if it's iPhone pin has always been the easiest way for me to get through because you always set a password and then you forget the password, then you got to reset the password. Like I feel like you don't forget a pin usually if it's significant. So I've always been a pin guy myself, but I was crafting this question, and I'm like, well, what if like my password? It's obviously if it was like if you could set a password that was like cartoon characters, you wouldn't want all the Avengers, right, or all of the Justice League. I was like, what if you could do like Captain America, Goofy, Batman, and like Marty McFly, and that could be your password, and no one else would ever guess that.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And there's also a lot of new different kinds of locking mechanisms coming out that some of which, especially back when what were they called? The visual crypto things where you would like pay tons of money for a picture of a unicorn or something like that. NFTs. Yeah, NFTs were actually being used as an unlock key for a lot of things through some applications. So, the device had to have, an NFT on it, and then it would unlock the service for your crypto wallet. So that was kind of interesting. So yeah,
I
absolutely.
I never understood NFTs. I tried to have somebody explain it to me once, and he was like, "It's like memorabilia, but you can't touch it or ever possess it." And I'm like, "So why would I want it?" And he's like, "Well, well," and he could never really tell me.
It's interesting. I bought one NFT once, and I let my daughter pick it out, and it was a NFT of a unicorn or something like that. And I'll never get my money back out of that thing. I'll never, ever, 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 ever get my money back out of that. I don't know what I was thinking.
It's like because if the guy was talking about sports memorabilia, it's like if I'm getting sports memorabilia, I want it to be like a jersey that I can hang up or a football that's signed that I can have in the room. Like, I don't want it to be like some fake player card I can never have in my hands. Like that's no real value. And so
Yeah,
I could never understand all the NFT and crypto stuff. I'm like, if I can't hold it or see it, it doesn't work for me. But that's just me. I'm extremely uh realistic and and old fashioned with stuff like that. But uh that
yeah.
wraps up another yeah. That wraps up another great episode of Mission Compliance. We hope our discussion today has provided you valuable insights, practical strategies, and inspiration to navigate the ever-evolving world of defense. We'd like to thank Mike for joining us talking about authentication, encryption, NFT, and Marty McFly. Thanks, Mike.
Always a pleasure, Roman.
But the conversation doesn't end here. We encourage you to keep exploring these topics and connect with us on our social media channels. Share your thoughts, ask questions, and engage with fellow listeners using the hashtag Mission Compliance Podcast. If they haven't already, what should they do, Mike?
Well, they should subscribe, and tell your friends about this podcast. You know what? We've been getting a lot of great new subscribers. We just hit 2,000 subscribers on YouTube, which we're super, super excited about internally. And you know what? It's a great way to keep up with all things in the defense industry, especially when it comes to compliance.
That's right. Going to your favorite podcast platform and clicking that notification bell or that subscribe button or whatever it looks like is the best way to know when new episodes like this one are released. And like Mike said, we'd really appreciate it if you could rate and review the podcast because your feedback helps us to continue to bring you thought-provoking episodes and high-quality content. Join us next time as we delve further into the dynamic world of defense, security, and industry innovation. Until then, take care, stay informed, and make compliance your mission. See you next time.
Thanks, everybody.